Okay, welcome to this next Django tutorial. Here we'll be setting up user registration, so letting users create accounts. And the first step is we could go ahead and add this to our current recipes app, but we'll use the app feature of Django here and separate it out into its own app. And one of the benefits of this is that, say you have another project down the road that you want to develop and it also has user registration, then you can just copy this app, pull it out, and paste it into that other project and have the functionality right in that new project. So to do that, first make sure your virtual environment is activated and go into your terminal or command line. I'm on Windows here, and we're going to type Python manage.py start app, and then the name of the app. So this one we'll just call users since it deals with users. So that'll take a second, and then we can see that we have a directory now called users. And whenever we add a new app, the first thing we have to do is go into our config, our project settings.py, go into installed apps, and add it to this list. So it'll be users. And then I sort it out by local apps, but remember to have that trailing comma there. We can save that. And now the next thing we want to do is we want to create a view. So we can go to our new users app, go into the view, and we can just create a function register that takes in the request. And what we'll want to do here is handle the registration. And so registration is a complex thing. If you think about it, there's usernames, making sure the passwords match, making sure the passwords are secure, all these things. And luckily Django comes with some pre-built forms and a lot of things that we can use. So we'll import that. So we'll have to import from django.contrib.auth.forms, import user creation form, like that. And then in this function here, we'll just instantiate that form. So we'll say form equals user creation form. And then we'll return render, so we can render a template. The first thing it takes is that request object. The next thing is the template, which we don't have yet, but we'll make it. And so we'll just say users/register.html. And then we can pass in the context or some kind of an object. So we'll just create an object, and we'll say form, and we'll pass in that form that we have up here. Okay, now we can go ahead and actually create that template. So if you remember, you have to create a new directory. So I'll go new file, and you can just type in the path, and it'll create the directories. So you can go templates / the name of the app, so users, and then / whatever template we want. So it'll be register.html. And we're going to want to inherit the base for this one, so it has the navigation and things like that. So we can go into our recipes app, templates, about, and just grab this content right here to inherit from the base. And we can close the recipes app, go back into users, go into register, and paste that in and save that. So now we are inheriting that base HTML, so the navigation and stuff like that. And next we want to go ahead and add the form. So we can delete the about content, and we can add a div with a class container. This is Bootstrap, so you can type .container if you have Emmet extension, which I highly recommend getting, EMMET. And then within there, we can set up a form, and we can set up the method equals post. And if you don't know what that means, we'll explain it, but method equals post. And then the first thing we want to pass is a template code and do CSRF_token. And this is, CSRF stands for cross-site request forgery. I believe it's a kind of attack, malicious attack, and this is a way that Django prevents that. So it creates this token. So we just need to include that. And then we'll include a field set and give that some classes to style that. We'll say form group. Within the field set, we'll have a legend, and this will be the sign up. So we'll say class equals border bottom. We'll give it a border on the bottom, and we'll say margin bottom 4, MB4. And then in the text we'll say sign up, since this is a registration form. And then below that we can actually input the form. So you do double curly brackets and then the form, since we passed that into the context. And then below the field set, we actually have to include our own submit button. So the form here will just show the input fields, but we actually have to create the button ourselves. So first we'll create another div here with the class form group. And we'll also give that a little padding on top of 3. And then in here we'll put an input submit. So you can do input : submit, and it'll create an input of that type. We can have the value, which is what text shows up, sign up. We can add some classes to it so it's styled a bit, and we'll say btn, outline, primary. And then we'll also add something below the form if somebody already has an account and they don't need to register, they just need to log in. We'll give them a link to log in. So we'll create a div first with border top class, and we'll also say padding top of 3 to give it a little space, and then we'll put an A tag in here to link. For now we'll just leave this as a £, but it'll say already have an account, log in here, or something like that. Okay, so now that we have the view and we have the template, but in order to tell Django when to serve that view and that template, we have to hook it up to the URLs. And so we could do the whole include and create our own URLs file here, but for simplicity's reason, for now, we'll just create it in our project URLs file, so our config URLs. And below this, we'll just add another path, and we'll say, when you go to the register path, then we want to, first we need to import the view, so we'll say from users import views as user views, because views is pretty generic, so we'll use user views so that we can know specifically where it's coming from. So we'll say user views and then dot the name of the function, which was register, and we'll include a name and we'll just call it user-register, and then we have the trailing comma. So now we can try this out. So now if we go back to the terminal and write python manage.py run server, and this fires up and we go to localhost port 8000, and I pull this in to the view, everything's running, we're seeing the recipes, and if I go to /register, boom, we have this form. Now it doesn't look amazing, and so we'll clean this up as we go along, but that's cool. We have this showing up. Django has done a lot of things for us here out of the box. And there's one quick thing we can do to make it a little bit better. So if we go back to the code and back to the template, we can pass a modifier in, and we could say dot as underscore p, and this will basically say display everything as a paragraph, so it splits it onto its own line. And so the server is running, so it should refresh. If we come here and refresh, you see it's a bit more cleaned up, but by the end of this it'll look a lot nicer. But now if we try and fill out this form, so if we type in test user and fill in some passwords, and click sign up, it seems like it's working. It seems like something worked, but nothing actually was created. If we go into the admin and log in and check this out, we can see that we don't actually have this new user here, and that's because we don't have the form set up to actually create new users. So we have to update it a little bit to handle updating the new users, which we'll do now. And this is where that method equals post comes in, because right now we've been using get requests. That's the default request, and that's most of the time when you're just sending over some kind of information to the user, like this web page, it uses a get request. Post request is when we are sending data to the server, to Django. So if we go back to the code now and go back into our view, we can check here if the request is a post or a get. So we can say if request.method equals post, then we want to instantiate the form, but we want to pass in the request dot post data. So this will be actually the form data. The next step would be making sure that this form data is valid, that there's no errors. So we can say if form dot is underscore valid. This means it passes all the validations. Then here we can actually handle the data, and we have the clean data. So we can grab the username field, for example, equals form.cleanData .get, because this is the clean data is a dictionary, and then whatever we want to grab. So we'll grab the username, and we can also utilize something built into Django called messages, which are like messages that just pop up and the next reload of the page will go away. So we'll want to import these. So we'll say from Django.contrib import messages, and then here we can instantiate, or we can create a message. So we can say messages dot, there's a few different ones. So this is messages.success. There's messages.info, I believe. You can look at the Django documentation to see what other message types there are, but this is message.success. And then we pass in the request, and then we pass in the actual message. And so we'll use an F string here. I think this is Python 3.3 and up, so otherwise you can just use normal string concatenation. But we'll say username, your account has been created. Perfect. And then if the account has been created successfully, we don't want to send them back to the register page. We want to send them to the home page now because they've registered, right? So we can do that with something called a redirect. So we'll have to import this. So up from Django.shortcuts, import redirect. And now if this checks out, if the form is valid, then we can return this redirect to recipes-home. Else here, so this is if the request.method equals post, else, so if it's a get request or some other request, then we can say, we can just tab this in here and say form equals user creation form. This way, if the request equals post, then we'll instantiate the form, but pass in the data. If the form is valid, then we'll give them a message, your account has been created, and redirect them to the home page. If the form is not valid, then we'll return the register form, but this form that we pass will have their data here, so it'll still have their data. And if this isn't a post request, then we'll just pass in an empty form. So this looks all set. Okay, so now this form is all set up, but we want to deal with these messages in the template and show them. So we'll actually do this in the base.html, so that if we pass in any message, it'll just show up. We don't have to put it into each template. So if we go back to recipes, templates, base, we can put this right in the block content. So right below this div here, right above the block content, right below the nav, we'll first have to check. So we'll open up an if statement, if messages, so if there's any messages, and then we'll close that because we always have to close these conditional statements in this template file. So if we have messages, then we'll loop through the messages. So we'll say for message in messages, and we'll also close that for, so we'll end that for. And now within here, we're looping through these messages. So we can create a div with a class alert, and also give it alert. And within here, we can actually use the data that we're passing in. So this will create a dynamic class, because Bootstrap has different classes if you're going to alert something, danger, success, if it's green or red. And so this is when we use that messages.success. We can access that with tags. So we'll say message.tags. So this will say alert-success for the one we just passed in, and then in the actual text we can just pass the message. Okay, so save that. And now we can go back to the register page, refresh this. Everything still works. We can try again. New user, password 123, password 123. I hope that passes all of the checks, and sign up. Let's see, we got some kind of, this password is too common. So we might have to use some kind of harder password. So type something in and click sign up. And now we can see that it's been redirected to the home page. New user, your account has been created. But now if we go back to the admin, when we go to users, we still don't see that user. There's just one last thing that we have to do. So let's go back to register, just because we'll be going back there. Go back to the code. And the last thing we have to do, we can get out of this recipes app, go back into the users app, go back into the view, and right after the form is validated, so now that we know that the form is validated, we have to run form.save. And this will actually save the form and register the user. So let's try this one more time. So if we go new user, enter a secure password, click sign up, we get the message, new user, your account has been created. Beautiful. We go to the home page. If we go to the admin to take a look, we go to users, and we see new user. Now they don't have an email address, which we'll address next. No pun intended. If that's a pun, I'm not sure, but awesome. So now someone can actually sign up, create an account. So now if we want to customize this so they can add an email address, we'll pull back up the code. And what we have to do now is actually create a new file. So in this users app, we'll create a file, forms.py. And in this file, we'll have to import some things. So from Django, import forms. From Django.contrib.auth.models, import user. And then from Django.contrib.auth.forms, import that user creation form. And what we're going to want to do is override this user creation form. So we'll create a class. We'll call this user register form, and it'll inherit user creation form. But we'll update it a little bit. So we'll give it an email field. So we'll say email equal forms.email field, like this. And then we'll add this class meta, which is like a configuration class that you can add in Django. And we'll have to specify a few things. So we'll specify that the model equals the user model that we imported at the top. And we'll also specify what fields to show. So this will actually dictate what fields and in what order they show up in the form. So first we'll want the username, then we will want the email, and then we'll want both passwords. And so to do this, we call it password 1 as the first password and password 2 as the second password. And so now to actually use this form, we have to go back to the view, and instead of using the user creation form, we'll use that form. So we have to import it first. So from this folder, import forms. And then anywhere that there was the user creation form, we will use forms.user register form. So I think it was only 2 times. So here and then here. And then we can get rid of this user creation import form from here. And now if we try again, we go back to the app, and we go back to register, and we create new user 2 at sup.com, give it a stronger password, hopefully those match. Perfect. Now new user 2 account's been created. We go to admin, we go to users, and we see new user 2 has this email. Beautiful. So now we have users able to register, and they're able to register with an email. Next, we're going to want to style it a bit more so that it looks better, because right now the form, if we go back to the form itself, doesn't look too pretty. So to make it look prettier, we're actually going to use a third-party package. So we'll be using our first package, Python package. So if we go back to the code and we stop the server, Control-C, we're going to install something called Django Crispy Forms. So pip install Django-crispy-forms and click Enter. Okay, and now that that's been installed, just like when we create our own apps, when we install third-party packages, typically we'll have to add them to our installed apps in our settings.py. And for this, I like to go down and add a third-party portion. And this one will be called crispy_forms. And then at the very bottom, the default that it uses is Bootstrap 2, but we can use Bootstrap 4 to be a bit more modern. So we can say crispy template pack equals Bootstrap 4, and this is all in their documentation. And making these all uppercase is kind of a Python convention for being a configuration setting, something that doesn't really change, like a constant. And so the last thing that we have to do now is just update the template so that it can use this crispy form package. So right below where we extend the base in our register.html, we'll have to load crispy forms. So we'll do curly sign %tag load crispy_forms_tags. So that loads the crispy form tags into this file. And then previously we were using .asp to format the form, but now we can use this pipe symbol again like we used before for the date to add some modification, and we could say just crispy. So now we have this, and if we go back to the form itself and refresh, if you caught it, you know what happened. We forgot to run the server, so we can just Python manage.py run server. And if you type in the up or down arrows from the terminal, you can use recent commands. So we have the terminal up. Now if we go back to register, look at how much better that looks. So now it has this format. If we try and do some kind of error, so if we say at sub.com and we maybe don't make the passwords match, and you can see that it gives us these nice errors here. It gives us this icon and makes it red. 2 passwords did not match. If we try and use something that's already been used, like that username, then it alerts us everywhere that there's an error. So, but it also works if we want new user 3 at sub.com. Give it a nice strong password. If I can type them the same and then sign up, and beautiful. Now new user 3, our account's been created. If we go to the admin, we can go to users. We can see all of our users, new user 2 and 3, and they have emails, and our register form looks pretty. So beautiful. Now that users can register, we want to actually have them logging in and out so that we know if a user's logged in. So that's what we'll get to in the next video. As always, if you've enjoyed this series, please give it a thumbs up. I'm trying to crank these videos out, and I'm going to be diving into a lot more stuff like Django, using it as a backend with Django REST framework, probably React and Next.js and stuff like that. But for now, I'm focused on this Django project, so would love any support. If you are enjoying this, let me know in the comments. If you're having trouble, just comment below and I'll work through it with you. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.